So, CMON recently shipped out their Ice and Fire tabletop miniatures game. And it got me thinking about how much I hate the way they have made their game from a business perspective. And FFG, a year ago, released Runewars, the miniatures game. And they did the exact same thing, which is they decided to charge $3 per PVC mini for their game. They're going to charge you $3 per mini for PVC minis to play their rank and file army scale game. And it's so dumb. It's so idiotic. But I'm just going to put it up front right now. The whole point of this video is to just say, whatever other things about these games may be, however good they are, however much fun people have playing them, however, anything, everything except for the price, no matter how good those things are, these games cannot succeed because of the price. It's a choke point of failure. You cannot succeed because of it, no matter what else. You think, oh, it's a fun game. I'm going to create a great community. I'm going to get on the interwebs and I'm going to set up games. I'm going to start a local club down at my game store. It doesn't fucking matter. The games can't succeed because they decide to charge so much for what you're getting that you will never build a worthwhile audience. It will be a little group of people who cannot purchase enough to justify the production. Case closed. Fucking case closed right there. Summary judgment in my favor. It's it. It's over. Done. And we saw FFG's Runewars. That was basically DOA. It landed like spring 2017. It never got traction. Some people were like, oh, I'll wait till some more factions are out. Which was just, it turned out, a polite way of saying, I'm not interested. Right? And I think that was it. They were interested in the concept of Runewars, the miniatures game, but when they saw it, they didn't feel any emotional appeal. So they go, well, I'll wait till the next whatever, the next benchmark, as if maybe the emotional appeal will suddenly happen. But of course it didn't. The game cost too much. The miniatures were ugly. Frankly, most of them are ugly. And they're made of PVC plastic, a cheap, soft plastic. That's it. People aren't going to spend a ton of money to get into a game they're not overwhelmingly sold on. And now here comes CMON's Ice and Fire, and it's doing the exact same thing. And its Kickstarter didn't do very good, and of course the number one thing I heard, no value. No value in the Kickstarter. And now they've come along. You couldn't sell this in Kickstarter at a decent clip. Now you got to sell it in stores for twice the price. No, that's not going to happen. This game, basically, it has no chance to succeed. I mean, I don't know what sales CMON will be happy with. If the sales are, indie, tiny, nothing game, then maybe they'll keep doing it. If they have to pay more for the license, and if it's a lot of price to keep an army scale game up with new factions coming out, and they don't want to just go in the red for it, well, then guess what? This game's gonna die, and it's gonna die real fast. And I heard this counterpoint a few times. There's not even a lot of people defending this game online, but of the people that are, they don't tend to know that much. And a thing I heard again and again, especially about this price point of $3 per PVC mini, is, well, hey, listen, that's the industry standard price. This is the industry standard price. This is the price, that's the industry standard. That's just the normal industry standard. And my counterpoint, my challenge to anyone who would believe that is go ahead and just show me one rank and flank scale army game with PVC miniatures charging $3 a mini that is succeeding. Oh, whoops, you can't. Oh, you can't do that, can you? Because there isn't a single one. It's the industry standard price for an industry which doesn't exist. How stupid. It's not even stupid. You don't even know the basics of tabletop wargaming, but you're on the internet, of course, talking about all your expertise in tabletop wargaming. You don't know the first thing, apparently, because you don't even realize you're stepping on a booby trap of your own devisement. You've put a landmine down and immediately stepped on it and blown yourself up. There is no such thing as an industry standard price of $3 per PVC Mini. And quite frankly, there never will be. PVC Minis will never be worth what $3 is worth right now. And gamers will never pay that much. You might find a few people, sure, but you'll never find enough to be successful. And, of course, well, if you want to go out of business, that's a good strategy. But if not, well, then it's not really going to work. And this was really brought home to me by the fact I got Ice and Fire on the Kickstarter. I didn't think the value was very good, because it wasn't. And now I've received the pledge, and I was looking, you got 4 stretch goal units. I had them out on the table. Took everything out when I got it. And I looked at them. It's Stark Longbowmen, Bolton Dogs, Bolton Cavalry, and Lannister Cavalry. And I looked at these 4 units. And it occurred to me that if you were to buy these now in a store, it would cost you $140. And a lot of online retailers would take $5 off. So maybe you get it at $120. And you can see the picture of them here. Does that look like $140 worth of anything to you? No, it's not even close. You have more money than sense if you think it's even anywhere close. This isn't $140 worth of jack squat. And that really gets to be the problem. You might get some people to buy a unit or two, but they're going to take it home. They're going to get it out on their bench or their desk or their kitchen table. They're going to take all the pieces out. They're going to look at it and they go, was this little unit of 12 guys, 12 little plastic army men, or 4 cavalry army men, is this worth $35? Are these 2 units worth $70? Are these 4 units worth $140 that I'm looking at right now? Do I feel like this is a sustainable cost to my hobby? And the answer is no. And it doesn't pass the kitchen table test. You take it home, you open it up, you look at it, and you go, Jesus fucking Christ, this ain't enough stuff for what I spent. And I've had this experience. Every time I buy a thing, you take it home, you open it up, and, it's a middling price, and you just move on. Okay. Sometimes it's a great price. You go, wow, I can't believe I got all this for this price. And other times you go, this is too expensive. This just costs too much. I'm looking at what I have, and I'm not impressed. And then it also occurs to me, I paid a bunch of money for it. Well, that's killer. That sends tabletop games to their grave. And the fact is, most people aren't even going to bite once at $35 for 12 PVC minis that look like this. Nope. No fucking chance. No chance. And it bothers me. And the reason it bothers me, because I used to be into Warhammer. Well, I've been into Warhammer Fantasy Battle since I was a little kid. And Games Workshop drove that game into the ground. But with the new market, with these new innovations that really have come about thanks to Kickstarter and Kickstarter board games, miniature board games, miniature games, there's really nice looking PVC miniatures now being made, and they don't cost the manufacturer much. They don't cost much in mold costs. They don't cost hardly anything at all in actual production costs, material costs. And I thought, wow, when I saw Warhammer Fantasy Battles die, there was a lot of talk about maybe who would take the crown, who would take over. Was there a market to take over? And there was this idea, well, yeah, you can use PVC minis now as your tabletop minis for your war games because they look good. They're they have some dynamicism in the posing. They can be glued together from multi-parts. They can be multi-part figures that are glued together. So it's possible now for them to use this kind of mini and this kind of approach to make a tabletop war game. And I was just so enamored with the promise of being able to do this with PVC miniatures the same way they were making these really high value Kickstarter games with lots of minis in them. For, it would be over $100, but you would get a lot of minis. And you kind of go, oh, well, bring that approach to a tabletop war game like Warhammer and make it affordable. Instead of asking people for this absurd commitment, which you have to have a game, which people are buying. The buy-in is so high. The buy-in is so ridiculously high, where they go, I just love the setting. I love these minis. I got to be a part of this. I have friends who play, or they have a long history. Warhammer was the thing a lot of people were introduced to as a kid, so they just have that nostalgia and that connection from childhood. It's like your tabletop religion, and they just have so much buy-in from decades of being involved and just loving the minis, loving the background, loving the world. Well, okay, where do you get that level of buy-in? Well, you don't if you're just some new game. If you're FFG's Runewars miniatures game, people can talk about it like, oh, it costs about the same price. It only costs like $250 to get a large army. Well, who gives a shit? Because I don't have any buy-in. People buy into Warhammer 40K. That's why they're willing to spend so much. Your Johnny-come-lately game with ugly miniatures? Who gives a shit? Nobody fucking cares. And here was the promise of PVC miniature games where, yeah, okay, so you get miniatures for $1.25 or maybe $1.50 per mini. And they can package them up, that you're buying, 40 at a time. But okay, charge $45, charge $50. And then it's a good value. That was the promise of these PVC miniature games, and then FFG, they come right out the gate and make a hard left turn into a brick wall with Runewars. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing when I saw the news for that game and how much it was going to cost. They put out boxes of 8 guys, and it cost $25. And their starter set was a shitty value on top of it. The starter set. The loss leader involved no loss and very few sales. And then to buy the actual units for the game, 8 figures for $25. Like, what planet are they on that they thought? And this is really, you can't know anything about tabletop gaming. If you work for FFG, you're an executive, whatever, you're in management, and you go, yep, $3 for these, $25 for a box of 8 of these PVC minis. You don't know anything about tabletop gaming. If you put on your resume, I know all about tabletop gaming, your boss now knows you're a fucking liar. You necessarily don't know anything about it, right? It's one of those things. You can't be a PhD in mathematics and not know 2 + 2 = 4. Like, necessarily, you're fucking lying if you say you are. And so FFG comes out and it's $3 for a PVC mini. And you go, well, this is just going to fail immediately. This is just going to go nowhere. And, oh, big surprise, it came out and it went nowhere. Nobody was playing. It's one of those things where people have to find, there was a good amount of discussion about it because you had to go onto the FFG's forum and discuss it before you could find somebody to talk to about this fucking game. Nobody was playing it. Nobody wanted to spend that much money on a game in which they really had no buy-in. And no one really had any reason to have buy-in to Runewars the miniatures game. It's Runewars the miniatures game. Like, what is giving me I just love the non-existent lore. I just adore these ugly minis that are stupid. And the cheap plastic they're made out of. Like, there's no reason to have buy-in. Now, CMON comes out with Ice and Fire, and I think it's pretty obvious from the Kickstarter. They thought, well, people love A Song of Ice and Fire. They love these novels, so we're getting incredible buy-in. But guess what? Game of Thrones ain't Star Wars. Yeah, a lot of people are watching this show. People are less desperate to play the game. This ain't Star Wars, okay? And this is a brand new game with no cachet, no history. You're not attached to the game like you are with 40K. People can like the world or the novels, although it tends to be people have read the books and people watch the show to be entertained. They're not enamored with the world. I haven't heard of many people. I've gone in Song, Ice, and Fire forums and read different things. I don't see that many people enamored with the world. And it's an interesting thing, like the Warhammer 40K world. You wouldn't want to live there, but it's easy to be enamored with it, right? You wouldn't mind getting to, like, go and visit it if you're not going to get raped by a demon and vaporized by a titanium skeleton. It would be kind of cool to see it. And it's really fun to read the lore and all that. It's a world you can get enamored in. A Song, Ice, and Fire, not really. Not really. Like, I watch a Game of Thrones. I don't really feel like, if somebody gave me the Silmarillion, if somebody gave me some book of pre-Song, Ice, and Fire or Game of Thrones lore, like, here's the founding men, here's some stories about, I wouldn't read it. I don't care. I'm not enamored with the world. I'm entertained by the story. Well, now CMON puts out their A Song, Ice, and Fire. Okay, that's fine, but I like the storyline. I'm not enamored with the world to where you're going to overcharge me for a product with, A Song, Ice, and Fire slapped on the front of it, and I go, oh, well, just whatever it costs, sure. And here's the thing, not many other people are either. Certainly not enough to keep you out of the red. And it was so disappointing to me to see that promise is just gone up in smoke. It's just destroyed. The promise of PVC miniature games is just, it went nowhere because no one was willing to do it right. You want to take this cheap material, which allows you to have this very low cost army scale miniature game, and then your big plan is to charge what fucking GW charges for their miniatures, which is psychotic. So now, A Song, Ice, and Fire is going to fail. Right? Runewars, the miniatures game, has already failed. They've got the unfortunate idiots at FFG have an 18-month pipeline of production. So they've still got releases coming out because it hasn't even been a full 18 months since the initial starter box was released for Runewars, the miniature game. So they still got stuff coming out that no one is buying and people haven't bought anything for it for a year. They still got stuff coming out. It failed. And now A Song, Ice, and Fire is going to fail for CMON, right? I'm waiting for the deep discounts I see online. I think because of the delays, it might not be out for this year's Black Friday sales, but we'll have to see. And it's going to fail. And Warhammer Fantasy Battles failed, and Kings of War didn't really take off, and Ninth Age was just a fan project that's not gone anywhere. And I see a lot of people say, well, there's just no market for rank and flank fantasy games. People aren't into rank and flank fantasy games, just culturally. It's like bell-bottom pants. It just went away. It just went away. Nobody's interested. And the thing is, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if rank and flank fantasy games have no market. And even more so, you don't know if that's true. Because here's the thing. No one is willing to do a rank and flank fantasy game right for us to find out if there's a market for them. Everybody has to hamstring their attempts in hilariously bad ways, which sink the project before it can ever go anywhere. Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Games Workshop worked hard to drive that game into the ground and destroy it. And in lots of different ways. But one thing I noticed right off the bat, I watch battle reports now. I don't play Warhammer Fantasy Battles anymore, but I watch battle reports once they got to 8th edition. The army sizes doubled and tripled. I have Old White Dwarfs. I love the battle reports they used to do in those. They would have armies of between 40 and 70 guys. And I went back. I still have my old issues. I looked it up. I counted them. They have armies of between 40 and 70 miniatures. And by the time they got to 8th edition, GW was... You see these units are like 50 Dwarven Hammers or 50 White Lions of Krace. Like, idiotic. Absolutely idiotic. Who wants to pay $50 a box for 10? Who wants to buy all those? And what's worse, who wants to paint them? Who wants to have to build these idiotic armies? And again, I talked about buy-in price. They made the buy-in price of Warhammer Fantasy Battles so high, people stopped buying in. even Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which by reputation is it's untouchable by comparison with Ice and Fire and Runewars, the miniatures game. They are still hitting the ball off the tee, and Warhammer Fantasy Battles was having a Hall of Fame career in the big leagues. Okay, so there's just no comparison between those two, and GW still managed to destroy the game with their just crazy pricing and crazy rules, which they tried to encourage you to go buy massive Death Star units, which would cost $250 for a single unit. They encourage you to buy these idiotic, gigantic models. Some of them look pretty cool, but they OP'd all the rules for these new models, which cost $60, $70. So you go buy one. You had to buy one. And the thing is, if the company making the rules really gives that little of a shit about making a good game, is it any surprise the game then fails? Then people go, oh, well, the market's just not there. Really? When your game is based around purposely making it broken for your newest models, which cost a lot of money, and people go, well, I'm not having that much fun anymore. You go, well, rank and flank fantasy games, their time's come and gone. Like, can't it just be that it could be we culturally could be in the greatest point ever for rank and flank fantasy games, and if you went to such tortuous lengths to fuck up your game, it would still fail, okay? And each subsequent game, which could have taken the throne from Warhammer, they've all failed in their own way. Kings of War it's kind of a bloodless game. Plus, Mantic, they talk about it's a bloodless company. There's no hype with anything Mantic does. I've never felt any hype for Mantic products. And Kings of War came out, and it's just like, oh, okay, like, are there exciting new armies? No. How do your models look? Well, they're ugly and stupid. They didn't cost that much, and I have Mantic models, but it's just like, they were filler models you could buy instead of buying GW stuff and then play Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And instead of trying to make their game be something you wanted to buy, it was just boring and it existed on some corner on the internet. Well, big surprise, it didn't take off. And the rules itself is like, oh, it's a great tournament game. Well, I don't play tournaments, and neither do most people who play rank and flank fantasy games. So that didn't matter. And again, it was a bloodless game. It really took the original idea of you're role playing a battle with these fantastic forces and just eliminated all the reasons that would be exciting, and really just ended up with a bunch of squares that pivoted and moved forward and then rolled dice and then fucked off. And who cared? Who cared? There's just no fun in it. They managed to drain all the fun out of it. So, not surprising, it failed. Ninth Age wasn't even a real product. Again, and then Runewars. And Song, Ice, and Fire, here they come. Runewars had all the FFG silliness, and it's X-Wing, but with a fantasy army. Hey, you know what? Age of Sigmar proved, who cares what the rules are? It all comes down to my big two is this truism about miniature fantasy games. You can talk about rules all you want. Miniature gamers want cool fucking models and fun fucking times. And if you give them cool fucking models and rules that manage to stay out of their way, they're going to have fun fucking times with their friends playing with the cool fucking models. So Age of Sigmar proved, who fucking cares? As long as the rules are cohesive enough, you can get through them. Okay, Runewars could potentially be that. But it's ugly models, and it's super expensive. It's super expensive. And now, Song, Ice, and Fire, I think the rules, in terms of getting out of the way and just letting people play, probably a lot better than Runewars, and yet they still need to charge for bigger boxes. Now, it's 12 guys for $35. No one's going to pay that. Like I said, take out 4 units, put them on the table. Does that look like $140? No, not even a little bit. Not a tiny little bit. If you're going to make plastic army men, you better sell plastic army men. And they hamstring their games with this stupid idea that somehow they're going to charge GW-like prices because some idiotic glue-sniffing fanboy on the internet will tell you, well, that's the industry standard price for an industry that doesn't exist. That's the industry standard price. Which, by the way, let's consider, is that an industry standard price? Let's go look at the internet right now. A Song, Ice, and Fire, Game of Thrones. What is that based off of? Well, it's based off the War of the Roses, the 100 Years' War that went before it, that sort of time period. So I can go right now and find miniatures for that time period. Historical miniatures, 28 meter 28 millimeter scale or slightly larger. They're not as big as like Warhammer minis, and not quite 32 millimeter scale, which is unfortunate. But which is unfortunate because you can't mix them very well with Warhammer armies and all this, and the new Ice and Fire miniatures. But they're almost the same scale. They're 28 millimeter to 30 millimeter. So right now, let's go to a top manufacturer of Wars of the Roses and the 100 Years War miniatures, Perry Brothers Miniatures. Let's look right now for $140. What can I buy at some nice industry standard prices on their website? And I'm not talking about a starter set. I'm not talking about a package deal. I'm just talking about just one-by-one expansion boxes for these miniatures. What can I find? Okay, well, looking here, the price is around $30-35. So looks like I can buy 4 of these for the same price that I can buy 4 Song, Ice, and Fire miniatures boxes. And let's suppose I just went with the main ones I have here. I can buy this, which has 40 guys in it. I can buy this, which has 36 guys in it. I can buy this, which has 36 knights in it. And I can buy this, which has 12 cavalry in it. Okay, so what did I just do there? I bought 112 infantrymen and 12 cavalry. Now, a Song, Ice, and Fire, if I was to judge it by that standard, a Song, Ice, and Fire has 12 men per unit, 12 infantrymen, and 4 cavalry per unit. So I just bought a little over 9 units of infantry and 3 units of cavalry for the same price that Ice and Fire charges me for 4 units. I just bought 12 units. I got 4 times as much stuff from the industry standard right here on Perry Miniatures website. Does that make sense? Is this kidding through? If I spend $140 and I get 112 infantry and 12 cavalrymen and I put them all together, and I mean, they're not quite as fantasy looking, but this is what Ice and Fire is based on. These are the same kinds of troops and people. I take all this out, I put it together, I put it on the table. Does that feel a little closer to $140 worth of value? Yeah, it does. It feels a lot better than 24 infantry and 8 cavalry. Do you understand? So this industry standard, well, right here's the industry standard. Right here it is. $140 just bought me 112 foot infantry and 12 cavalry. Right? I can use these miniatures to play Game of Thrones. They're based right on the exact same time period to his fantasy world. His fantasy world is just the War of the Roses put into a fantasy world. That's it. Well, right here is the industry standard. Okay. Is $3 for a PVC mini, which doesn't look any better than any of these minis do? Do you think that's going to sell? You think that's going to sell. You think that's going to sell to miniature gamers who know something. Most miniature gamers are not ignorant. Most miniature gamers do not think $3 for a PVC mini is an industry standard you just have to live with. Most miniature gamers are actually kind of smart. Smart enough to be able to look around and understand historical miniatures exist. Smart enough to be able to search Google for other miniature companies. Well, there you go. Here's the pricing that CMON could have used. And it doesn't have to be quite this cheap, but it could have been, hey, listen, if I spend $140 and I get 80 infantry and 8 cavalry. Okay. They could have used a price similar to this and put it with the Song, Ice, and Fire miniatures. Oh, well, these are a lot cooler than historical miniatures. That really happened. That's boring. Now I get fantasy miniatures from Game of Thrones. Yay! And people would have been interested. And these are, you could even use these as historical minis. People, I really want some, 32, 35 millimeter tall, historical or medieval style miniatures. I could buy these. Because, look, they're priced according to the industry standard, which you can find on the Perry Brothers Miniatures website or Warlord Games Miniatures website with nothing more complicated than a Google search. Well, there you go. But instead of doing that, CMON in its infinite wisdom went, oh, you know what, we'll charge $3 a mini. And we'll just not sell anything. Because we'll make way more money if we don't sell anything. Genius. And it just breaks my heart. You could have had a replacement Warhammer Fantasy Battles here. You could have had it. Because you could have adapted to the new market. Which says, I need a little something more for my money than GW was giving me. I need a game that's a little less money hungry than GW was giving me. I want a game with rules that aren't trying to steal out of my wallet. And I want a game with miniatures that Don't ask a tremendously idiotic buy-in, which I'm simply not interested in giving. But instead, they got, oh no, we'll charge $3 a mini. And again, I don't know who they thought was going to pay it, but FFG, you can go ask them now. Is anybody paying it? Because the answer is no. And for CMON, it's going to be exactly the same. They're on pre-order now. The stuff's coming out soon. Guess what? This stuff is going to be, and it's going to feel dead by Christmas. This game is going to be feeling completely dead by Christmas because people just, if they miss the Kickstarter, they're not going to be interested in buying. Not now. Not at these prices. Not with these minis. And so what has CMON done? They've released a game to fail. What did FFG do? They released a game to fail. All the investment they put in it, they're going to be lucky to get it back. Because they, no matter what else is true about these games, they can't succeed. They just cost too much at the store. People go there and they go, I ain't paying that much for what I'm getting. There's no value there. It's terrible value. It's not intriguing. And they don't have anything to fall back on. Their games don't have any cachet to cause you to buy in. They don't have anything else going for them. No, great. It's the Runebound world. Nobody gives a shit. Oh, it's the Game of Thrones world. People give more of a shit, but people still don't give a shit. And so what do you have to buy them in? Well, maybe it'll be a fun game. Okay, well, how much does it cost? A fucking ton. I'm not going to pay $3 for PVC minis, which look like this. Sorry, that's not going to happen. And I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for miniature gamers on the whole. It's not going to happen. And why bother? If this is what you're going to do, why bother? Why put the game out in the first place? Because it's just going to fail.